For months, the night skies had been unusually restless. Amateur astronomers across the world noticed it first. Tiny flickers near Jupiter that didn't behave like stars or meteors. Some said it was a comet breaking apart. Others claimed it was a new satellite formation, but none of the explanations truly fit. Something strange was moving out there, and it was moving with purpose. At first, no one took it seriously. Governments brushed it off, news channels ignored it, and the people who kept talking about it were called conspiracy lovers. Yet every night, the strange objects grew a little brighter, a little closer. The movements were too organized, too precise to be random. They followed a pattern, one that looked eerily like a fleet. A few scientists quietly sounded the alarm. They noticed how the objects were traveling faster than any known human craft, yet slower than meteors. That speed was deliberate, like someone or something was studying from afar. Weeks passed before the truth finally came to light. What appeared in the sky one cold night near Jupiter wasn't a comet, nor a satellite cluster. It was the beginning of something Earth had never faced before. Every observatory turned its telescopes toward the same coordinates. What they saw made their voices tremble as they reported it. The objects weren't simple dots anymore. They were massive shapes. Some stretched for miles, dark and smooth like floating shadows. A few even reflected sunlight for moments, glinting silver and gold before vanishing again. They didn't broadcast signals, didn't respond to any attempts of contact. They just moved, closer quietly like hunters circling their prey. Then came the night the world could no longer deny it. Without warning, skies over many countries filled with unfamiliar lights. Even the most powerful radar systems couldn't make sense of what was entering the solar system. It was as if invisible waves distorted the air itself. People across the planet looked up and saw faint outlines forming, a line of enormous ships, sliding past Jupiter's orbit like silent ghosts. The first clear image taken by a deep space telescope left everyone speechless. It showed a fleet of colossal vessels shaped like claws and wings. They weren't built like human machines. They looked alive, as if bone and metal had fused together into living beasts. Some ships pulsed faintly with light, like they were breathing. The scientists named them Draconians after the ancient legends of dragons, and within hours, the name spread everywhere. The world changed overnight. Every news network broadcast the same footage, those dark shapes gliding through the void, growing larger by the hour. Panic took hold. Governments activated their emergency protocols. Military forces around the world entered silent readiness, though everyone knew no weapon ever tested could reach that far into space, or even make a difference if it did. In homes, people stayed up through the night, watching the skies, refreshing their screens, listening to the endless stream of breaking news alerts. Some prayed, others tried to convince themselves it was a misunderstanding. Humanity had long wondered what it would be like to meet another intelligent species. Few imagined the meeting would begin like this, one side arriving in silence, the other frozen in fear. For the scientists who had warned of this moment, sleep became impossible. They spent days glued to data feeds tracking the fleet's movements. The Draconian ships weren't moving randomly. They had formed an arc around the solar system, positioning themselves like a net closing around a single point, Earth. The pattern was undeniable. Earth was their destination. Weeks turned into days, and the tension grew unbearable. The world's leaders met secretly, though secrecy no longer mattered. Every conversation, every leak, every whisper ended up online. The public demanded answers. Who were they? What did they want? Could they be reasoned with? But there were no answers. Then came the first blackout. It started with one satellite, then two, then an entire network of communications suddenly failing. Every time an Earth satellite drifted near the Draconian fleet's path, it went silent. Engineers tried to reboot the systems, but the data was scrambled, replaced by strange patterns of sound. Long, low frequencies that no human language could decode. The signals were rhythmic, almost musical, like deep underwater calls. Soon after, one of the lunar observation bases detected a massive energy surge from the Draconian formation. No one understood what it was until it was too late. A blinding flash filled the darkness between the moon and Earth. It lasted less than a second, but it was enough to wipe out the entire lunar base. The explosion was so powerful that it left a crater visible even from Earth's telescopes. Hundreds of scientists, engineers, and researchers who had been stationed there were gone instantly. Humanity had just experienced its first direct strike. The reaction was pure disbelief. The world mourned, then panicked. Protests filled the streets. People begged for protection, though deep down everyone knew there was nowhere to hide if the Draconians decided to move closer. As panic spread, a small group of astronomers noticed something peculiar. The energy emitted by the Draconian ships had a signature similar to biological waves, not artificial ones. That meant their vessels might not just be machines, they could be alive. The ship's engines pulsed like heartbeats, and their weapons left behind traces of organic matter. It was a discovery that terrified scientists even more. If the ships were alive, who or what was controlling them? Governments across the planet began sharing secret data, forming an emergency alliance. Humanity was uniting, not under a flag, but under fear. Every major nation agreed to prepare for a single purpose: survival. As the fleet approached Mars, the last clear images from robotic probes showed details that felt unreal. The Draconian ships were vast, shaped like enormous wings of obsidian glass. Some had patterns along their hulls that shifted like scales. Others emitted vapor trails glowing faint green. A few even released smaller craft that darted ahead like insects scouting a target. Then something unexpected happened. The fleet slowed down. They stopped advancing near Mars' orbit. For several tense days they just floated there, silent, unmoving, almost as if waiting for something. During this pause, human scientists tried once again to make contact. They transmitted every known frequency, mathematical messages, light pulses, even music. No reply came. Instead, new distortions began appearing in Earth's magnetic field. The planet itself seemed to react to the fleet's presence. Northern lights began appearing in places they never had before: India, Egypt, South America. Skies glowed with green fire while power grids flickered and died. People whispered about omens. Some said the Draconians were testing Earth's defenses. Others claimed they were scanning the planet, searching for something hidden. Whatever their purpose, the silence was more terrifying than open attack. In the middle of that fear, a strange calm settled across humanity. People began helping each other again. Old divisions, political, national, religious, mattered less. Humanity was finally seeing itself as one species facing something far beyond comprehension. All across the globe, observatories, labs, and defense systems worked together like parts of a single mind. A new sense of unity took root, not out of hope but survival. For the first time in history, humans weren't fighting each other. They were staring together into the same dark sky, waiting to see what would happen next. Then came the final transmission before the silence. An observatory in Chile picked up a short, faint message from the fleet. It wasn't in words, but in tones, low, layered frequencies that vibrated through every device like a deep growl. When scientists slowed the recording and analyzed it, they noticed a repeating pattern that translated roughly to one chilling phrase: origin confirmed. Within hours, the fleet began to move again. Not toward Mars, not toward Jupiter, but directly toward Earth. Every telescope turned to track them. Every screen in the world showed those massive dark figures approaching. The ships cast shadows even in space, blocking sunlight in waves that rolled across the sky like an eclipse. It felt like the beginning of an ancient story, one humanity was never meant to witness. As the fleet drew nearer, strange storms erupted in Earth's upper atmosphere. Lightning without clouds, winds that twisted against the planet's natural currents. Some scientists believed the ships were manipulating gravity itself. Others thought it was just nature reacting to their sheer presence. By the time the Draconian Armada reached the edge of Earth's orbit, silence had settled everywhere. Air traffic stopped. Cities dimmed their lights to conserve energy. Every human being waited. The ships didn't fire. They didn't land. They simply hovered, giant silhouettes against the stars watching. For hours, nothing happened. Then, one by one, they began to disappear into the darkness, vanishing completely from radar and sight. People cheered, thinking the danger had passed. But deep down, everyone knew it wasn't over. The way those ships had moved, the precision, the control showed they hadn't retreated. They had merely positioned themselves. Something far greater was coming. The world had seen the first face of the unknown. It was no longer a question of whether humanity was alone in the universe. The question now was much more terrifying. Why had they chosen Earth? And as the skies cleared and the stars returned to their familiar places, one truth became impossible to ignore. The Draconian Armada hadn't just arrived. They were preparing for something that would change the fate of Earth forever. The world didn't sleep that night. The skies were calm, but every person could feel the weight of something heavy above them. The Draconian Armada had appeared, lingered, and vanished, leaving behind more questions than answers. News channels replayed the same footage again and again: the dark shapes above Jupiter, the flashes of strange light, the sudden silence. People wanted explanations. Governments wanted control. Scientists wanted understanding. But no one had any real answers. Days passed. Life tried to return to normal, but it was clear nothing would ever feel normal again. Farmers in quiet towns watched the sky as they worked. Children pointed at stars, asking their parents if the dragon ships were coming back. Internet forums filled with theories. Some said the ships had been scared off, others believed they were hiding, waiting for the right moment. Deep down, everyone knew this wasn't over. Then the first sign came. It started with faint sounds caught by radio telescopes, low, rumbling pulses echoing through space. They didn't match any known natural phenomenon. They weren't meteors, weren't radiation, and definitely weren't human-made. The tones had rhythm, like heartbeats, slow and deliberate. Some said it sounded like breathing. The signals came from different corners of the solar system, but when scientists mapped them, all the sources formed a perfect circle around Earth. The Draconians were still there, hidden, watching. Governments across the world tried to keep it quiet, but secrets don't last long anymore. Within hours, the recordings leaked online. People listened, shivering as the strange sounds vibrated through speakers. It didn't sound like machines, it sounded alive. That was when the fear changed shape. It wasn't just the fear of invasion anymore. It was the fear of something intelligent, something that could feel and think in ways humans couldn't imagine. Military forces began setting up high-orbit surveillance. Satellites were reprogrammed to search for cloaked or invisible objects. A few of them actually found something. Faint distortions appeared in the readings. Small patches of space where light bent unnaturally. Whatever was out there was massive and silent. They were waiting. Then, without warning, it happened again. Another blackout. Communication satellites started failing one by one. GPS systems glitched and navigation screens turned blank. Airplanes were grounded. Ships lost contact with ports. The world went half-blind in a single day. Panic began spreading faster than any official statement could control it. In a hidden observatory in the mountains, a small group of scientists made a terrifying discovery. The Draconian signals had changed. They were no longer random pulses. Now they followed a pattern, structured, repeating, deliberate. It wasn't a sound, it was a message. When decoded into visual form, the pattern created symbols almost like writing, curves, spirals, and sharp edges arranged with eerie symmetry. Every time the sequence repeated, the central symbol glowed brighter. The scientists didn't know what it meant, but one thing was clear. They were trying to communicate. The world's leaders decided to respond. A message was prepared using universal math, a method humans had hoped would work for any intelligent species. The reply was broadcast using every deep space transmitter available. The message was simple: we come in peace. We seek understanding. No answer came. Hours passed, then days. The world waited, terrified but still hopeful. Then something strange happened on the moon. Satellites picked up a massive energy spike near the site where the first lunar base had been destroyed. Dust clouds swirled across the crater, though no wind should exist in space. Within minutes, strange objects began forming out of the debris, floating metallic shards joining together as if magnetized. Slowly, a shape began to emerge. It wasn't mechanical. It looked like a creature being born, built from the remains of the base itself. Cameras recorded it for several minutes before the feeds went dead. When transmission resumed, the object was gone. The scientists called it the Rebirth. Others called it the warning. Soon after that event, new symbols appeared in the Draconian signal. This time, the pattern was simpler. 3 spirals intertwined, followed by a sharp break. Linguists who analyzed it agreed on one possible meaning: do not interfere. The message spread everywhere. People argued about what it meant. Some thought it was a threat. Others believed it was a warning not to provoke them. A few even claimed it was a plea, as if the Draconians themselves were afraid of something else, something beyond even their control. Meanwhile, strange things began happening on Earth itself. Power grids fluctuated in ways no engineer could explain. Ocean currents changed slightly. Migrating birds lost direction, flying in perfect circles for hours. Deep-sea sensors recorded low sounds similar to the Draconian frequencies. It was as if the planet was resonating with them, responding to their presence. In the middle of this global confusion, a brave team of researchers managed to trace one of the signal sources to near-Earth orbit. They sent a drone probe to investigate. What the drone found was beyond imagination. Floating just outside the atmosphere was something that looked like a fragment of a Draconian ship. It wasn't large, maybe the size of a small building, but it pulsed faintly with light. Its surface looked alive, patterns shifting like skin. When the drone approached, the object reacted. It released a wave of energy that disabled the drone instantly, but before the feed cut off, the last frame captured something remarkable. The fragment had opened, revealing a hollow core filled with structures that looked organic, veins, tissues, and something that resembled a heartbeat. The discovery confirmed what many had feared. The Draconian ships weren't just technology, they were alive. This revelation spread quickly across the planet. Scientists couldn't stop the leaks anymore. The news hit the world like a storm. People didn't know whether to feel horror or wonder. Some said these ships were ancient beings that had traveled the stars for eons. Others said they were built by a civilization that used living matter instead of metal. No one knew which version was true, but what came next left everyone speechless. One evening, the skies above the northern hemisphere shimmered again, just like the first time the fleet was seen. Lights danced in strange formations, not like stars but like symbols drawn across the heavens. For hours those lights remained still. Then slowly they began to form a shape, a ring. At first, it looked like a simple circle, but when telescopes zoomed in, people saw dozens of Draconian ships hovering together, facing inward, toward the empty space within the ring. It was as if they were performing some kind of ritual or operation. Then a massive pulse of light burst from the center of the formation. It didn't strike Earth. It spread outward, vanishing into the distance. Scientists recorded the energy wave passing through space faster than light could travel. No one knew its destination, but it was clear the Draconians had sent something or someone a message. After that pulse, the fleet broke formation and drifted away again, silent as ever. Humanity realized something crucial then. The Draconians weren't attacking. They were searching. The question was for what? As governments tried to analyze the situation, a quiet panic returned among the people. Everyone had seen the ships, everyone had felt their power, but no one understood their purpose. The silence of the aliens was worse than any weapon. In every corner of the planet, people began preparing in their own ways. Some built shelters, others recorded messages to their loved ones. A few groups even started sending their own signals into space, hoping to make contact independently. Humanity was scared, but it was also curious. The unknown had never stopped humans before. In the middle of the fear, a new discovery came from the oceans. Underwater research stations detected vibrations in the deep trenches, frequencies nearly identical to the Draconian ones. The signals came from beneath Earth itself. It was as if something deep below the surface was responding to the Draconian call. This revelation shook the scientific community. If the signals matched, it meant that whatever the Draconians were looking for might already be on Earth. Something ancient. Something that had been here long before humans ever walked the planet. No one dared to say it out loud, but the thought echoed in every conversation. Maybe Earth wasn't just their target. Maybe it was their home. Governments ordered deep-sea drones to investigate, but before any expedition could begin, the Draconian fleet moved again. They approached Earth slowly this time in a coordinated pattern. Every major telescope caught the sight of them. Hundreds of dark living ships gliding toward the planet in complete silence. Then, just as people braced for the worst, they stopped. The ships formed a massive spiral above Earth's orbit, glowing faintly like a constellation. For hours nothing happened. Then, the spiral flickered once and faded away. The next morning all the Draconian signals stopped. The skies were quiet again. The sensors were empty. The fleet was gone. Yet everyone knew that silence didn't mean safety. It meant something else, something more mysterious and possibly more dangerous. The Draconians had not been defeated. They had not left in fear. They had simply disappeared without a trace. And as the world took its first breath of relief, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, one of the monitoring stations picked up a faint heartbeat. Slow, rhythmic, familiar. The same pattern the Draconians had sent before. It pulsed 3 times, then stopped. Humanity realized the truth. It had been too afraid. After the Draconian fleet disappeared, Earth fell into a strange kind of silence. The skies looked peaceful again, but nobody trusted that peace. Every night people searched the stars, expecting the dark shapes to return. The news called it the calm after the storm, though everyone knew deep down that the storm wasn't over. It had only changed. Shape governments called the event Phase 1. They tried to convince the public that everything was under control. Officials promised that Earth's defense systems were being improved, and that scientists were working around the clock to understand the signals the Draconians had left behind. But those signals, those low, haunting tones that once filled space, had not completely vanished. Some stations still caught faint echoes. It was like a heartbeat, steady and patient, reminding humanity that something was still out there. Or perhaps down below. In the weeks that followed, a strange unity formed among nations. The fear of invasion had brought people together in ways years of diplomacy never could. Scientists from every corner of the planet began working under one banner: survival. They called it Project Eclipse, a global plan to defend Earth using every resource humanity had left. It wasn't just about weapons. It was about information, technology, and cooperation. For the first time, the brightest minds from rival countries worked side by side, sharing data openly. It was humanity's first true global effort, and it was driven by the quiet terror that the Draconians might return. The first part of Project Eclipse focused on strengthening space observation. Thousands of satellites were reprogrammed to scan the outer system, watching for any sign of the fleet. But as new systems came online, scientists noticed something that shook them deeply. The satellites weren't picking up new ships, but they were detecting distortions in space, faint ripples as if invisible objects were moving between dimensions. It was as though the Draconians had found a way to hide in plain sight. The second phase of Project Eclipse was defense. Humanity had learned its lesson from the destruction of the lunar base. Every weapon that could reach orbit was upgraded. Nations poured their budgets into energy shields, magnetic disruptors, and experimental rail cannons. Yet deep down, everyone knew these were desperate measures. Humanity was preparing to fight a force it didn't understand. Still, the work continued. People needed hope, and hope came from action. Engineers worked day and night. Soldiers trained in silence, and scientists studied the strange fragments that had fallen to Earth after the fleet vanished. Those fragments were unlike anything humans had seen before. Living metal that pulsed faintly when touched, as if it remembered being part of something larger. As researchers studied the fragments, they made a shocking discovery. Each one seemed to store data, but not in digital form. The information was encoded in biological patterns, cell-like structures that changed shape depending on light and temperature. After months of study, a pattern finally emerged. It wasn't random. It was a map. The map didn't lead to the stars. It pointed toward Earth itself, more precisely toward a region deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. That was when the world realized something extraordinary. The Draconians weren't just visitors. They had been searching for something here. Governments tried to keep the discovery secret, but it leaked almost immediately. People across the planet began to panic again. If something powerful enough to attract the Draconians was hidden beneath Earth's oceans, what was it? A weapon? A sleeping creature? A gateway? No one knew. But one thing was certain: whatever it was, the Draconians hadn't found it yet. That's when the third phase of Project Eclipse began, the counter-search. Using deep-sea exploration drones and advanced sonar, teams were sent to scan the ocean floor where the signal was strongest. The mission was risky, but the world needed answers. Days turned into weeks as drones descended deeper than ever before. The silence of the ocean felt endless, broken only by the faint hum of machinery. Then, one drone found something. At the bottom of the trench, buried beneath layers of rock and sand, it discovered a massive structure. It wasn't natural. Its surface was smooth and metallic, but it seemed to pulse faintly, like it was breathing. The signal the Draconians had been sending matched perfectly with the frequency coming from this object. Humanity had found what they were looking for. The scientists named it the core. The core was enormous, larger than any human-made structure, shaped like a sphere with countless glowing veins running across its surface. It looked ancient, far older than any civilization known to humanity. Some researchers believed it had been there before the continents even formed. Others thought it had fallen from space long ago. Whatever it was alive, or something close to it. When the discovery became public, the world was split. Some people called it a miracle, a chance to learn the truth about life beyond Earth. Others called it a curse, a trap left behind by forces that saw humans as insects. Despite the fear, the exploration continued. Scientists wanted to study the core up close. They built special submersibles capable of withstanding the crushing pressure and electromagnetic fields surrounding it. Every reading they took revealed something stranger. The core's outer shell wasn't solid metal. It was layered tissue like armor grown from a living being. Inside, energy pulses moved in rhythmic patterns almost like a heartbeat. One night, while the research vessel was stationed above the trench, something unexpected happened. The water around the ship began to glow faintly. The waves moved without wind. The scientists on board watched in disbelief as the surface rippled with soft blue light. Instruments started recording faint signals again, the same ones the Draconians had used. Then the readings from the core changed. The pulses grew faster, stronger, like it was responding to something unseen. Deep down, the team realized what was happening. The core was waking up. On land, the world reacted instantly. Governments ordered a shutdown of all exploration. Military forces were mobilized, but it was already too late. The ocean itself seemed to hum with energy. Across the globe, sensors picked up strange magnetic fluctuations. It felt like Earth was holding its breath. At that same moment, something incredible happened in orbit. For weeks, satellites had reported nothing unusual, but suddenly new readings appeared. Objects, hundreds of them, were materializing near the moon's shadow. The Draconian fleet had returned. Unlike before, the ships didn't move aggressively. They formed a wide circle around the planet, staying perfectly still. It was as if they were standing guard. Humanity realized something terrifying. They weren't coming to attack. They were coming to protect the core. Project Eclipse shifted focus immediately. Instead of preparing for war, scientists and military leaders debated what to do next. Should they destroy the core before it awakened? Or should they leave it alone and hope the Draconians would depart peacefully once their purpose was fulfilled? No one could agree. Then came the first sign of communication. Every radio, phone, and transmission device on Earth flickered simultaneously. A voice-like sound filled the air, not human, not mechanical, something deep and layered like the echo of a storm. The message repeated in countless languages, though the meaning was the same for all. Do not awaken the memory of the deep. The words sent chills across the planet. What did it mean? What was the memory of the deep? Experts debated endlessly, but the truth remained hidden. The core continued to pulse faster each day. The ocean around it grew unstable, and strange waves of energy spread across the globe. Electronics malfunctioned. Animals reacted in panic. The planet felt alive. Then, the unthinkable happened. One of the research subs that had been left near the core sent an emergency signal. The feed showed the object opening like a flower, revealing a glowing interior that shimmered with light. For a few seconds, shapes moved inside the glow, massive winged silhouettes that looked eerily similar to the Draconian ships. Then the feed went dark. Hours later, sensors recorded the energy output of the core doubling, then tripling. The glow from the trench grew so bright that it could be seen from space. The Draconian fleet reacted instantly, rearranging their formation into a tight circle around Earth. Their ships glowed with the same blue light, syncing perfectly with the core below. It was clear now the Draconians weren't enemies. They were connected to whatever the core was. Maybe they had created it. Maybe they were born from it. Or maybe they were trying to stop it from becoming something worse. People watched in fear and wonder as the skies shimmered with light. For a moment, the entire planet seemed caught between awe and doom. Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. The light faded. The signals vanished. The fleet drifted back into darkness. The core's pulse slowed again. The world was left in silence once more. But this time the silence felt heavier. like the pause before a storm returned stronger than ever. Humanity had survived another encounter, but it was no longer clear what kind of story they were living. Was this the beginning of contact or the countdown to something far greater than invasion? No one knew. But as people looked toward the stars that night, they noticed something different. The constellations had shifted slightly, just enough for astronomers to realize that something massive had moved between Earth and the rest of the galaxy, whatever the Draconians were doing. It wasn't over, and the world could only wait for the next sign. The world was still holding its breath after that first victory in orbit. People had seen the impossible, an alien warship fall like a dying star into the sky. News channels replayed the footage again and again, a massive shadow breaking apart in the upper atmosphere, glowing blue as it burned. Humanity had fought back, and for the first time in history, Earth had stood united against something not of this world. Yet even in their celebration, something felt wrong. It was too quiet. The skies, once filled with alien movements, now seemed still. No attacks, no signals, no movement at all. At first, the silence felt like peace. Then it began to feel like a trap. Satellites and telescopes tried to track the alien ships near Jupiter's orbit, but what they found made no sense. The Draconian Armada, hundreds of massive living vessels, was still there, floating in perfect formation. But they weren't moving. Their energy readings were flat, like a heartbeat that had suddenly stopped. Communication attempts from Earth received no answer. Probes sent closer reported only silence. No lights, no motion, no sign of life. It was as if the entire fleet had frozen mid-breath. The world's leaders held endless meetings trying to decide what this meant. Some said it was a trick, that the aliens were waiting for Earth to drop its guard. Others believed something had gone wrong among the Draconians themselves. There were theories of power failures, mutiny, even disease, but no one could be sure. So humanity watched and waited. Days turned into weeks. The Draconian fleet drifted unmoving, like a graveyard of monsters. Then something strange happened. Earth's long-range sensors began to detect faint pulses from the alien ships, soft rhythmic waves of soundless energy. They came and went every few hours, as if the fleet was breathing again, but slower, weaker. Scientists compared it to a dying heartbeat. A decision had to be made. Humanity couldn't just sit and watch forever. A small team was sent to investigate. Drones equipped with cameras and sensors were launched from an orbital station, flying toward the closest alien ship. The world watched the live feed as the drones approached. The ship was enormous, its surface covered in a texture that looked almost alive. The drone's cameras showed veins of faint light running beneath its hull, pulsing gently like blood under skin. When the drones finally entered through one of the ship's openings, the silence became deafening. Inside there was no movement, no crew, no signs of life, not even the remains of a battle. Everything was in perfect condition, but empty. It was like a ghost ship drifting in space. The walls inside seemed organic, as if the ship had grown rather than been built. Instruments found no oxygen, no energy, no heat. It was a hollow shell. At first, people thought maybe the Draconians had escaped, abandoning their ships. But as more drones entered more vessels, the same thing was found again and again. No life, no bodies, no damage, just emptiness. Then the recordings began to fail. Every time a drone entered deeper into the ships, its cameras glitched, its signals distorted. The video turned to static. The sound when restored was strange, like deep, slow heartbeats echoing through a cave. When the drones returned, their memory data was corrupted, as if something had erased their recordings from inside. That was when fear started to replace curiosity. The scientists couldn't explain what had happened. Theories spread wildly across Earth. Some believed the Draconians had suffered from their own biological technology turning against them. Others thought they had been destroyed by something even stronger than themselves. Religious leaders spoke of divine punishment, while others whispered about alien plagues or ancient cosmic forces that protected Earth. Then came the next shock. Within a few hours, every alien ship began to change. Their hulls started to shimmer, as if light was bending around them. Satellites captured strange images. The ships looked like they were dissolving. The solid metal and flesh-like structures broke apart into fine, glowing dust. Slowly, silently, the ships disintegrated into nothing. The process took less than 12 hours. By the next sunrise, the Draconian Armada was gone. Nothing was left. No wreckage, no debris, not even radiation. It was as if they had never existed. The entire world froze in disbelief. People filled the streets, staring up at the sky, wondering what had happened. For a few moments, humanity felt safe again. But deep down, no one truly believed it was over. Something about the way the ships vanished didn't feel natural. It was too perfect, too clean. Scientists said such total disintegration defied the laws of physics. Then the strange dreams began. Around the same time the ships vanished, people from different countries reported seeing the same images in their sleep. Vast oceans, glowing symbols under dark waters, and enormous eyes watching from the deep. None of it made sense, but the reports were eerily similar. The more researchers looked into it, the more frightened they became. The energy signature detected during those dream nights matched the frequency once emitted by the Draconian ships. It was as if something had transferred from space to Earth. Oceanic monitoring stations started detecting low-frequency vibrations coming from the deepest parts of the Pacific. These weren't earthquakes, they were rhythmic pulses perfectly timed, echoing from miles below the seafloor. The same pulse pattern found in the Draconian ships. The governments tried to keep this information secret, afraid of causing panic. But word leaked out. Conspiracy theories exploded online. Some said the aliens had died. Others said they had simply gone to sleep, hiding under the ocean to rebuild. Still, others believed they had never left at all, that their essence had fused with Earth itself. Meanwhile, people who had worked near the battle sites began reporting strange feelings. Astronauts on orbital stations spoke of hearing faint whispers through their communication devices, like someone calling from far away. Deep-sea researchers described unusual lights moving beneath the waves, as if something alive was glowing below. Despite all the fear, one thing was clear. Earth had changed. Humanity had not just survived an invasion, they had witnessed something beyond understanding. The Draconian Armada was gone, but their mystery remained, like an unfinished story written across the stars. In the weeks that followed, the world tried to return to normal. Space agencies stopped monitoring the battle zones. People went back to work, to life, pretending the danger had passed. Yet sometimes, late at night, satellites still picked up faint flickering lights where the Armada once floated, like ghost signals repeating the same slow pulse. Some scientists still study those signals in secret, hoping for answers. Others say it's better not to know. For now, the sky above Earth was quiet again. But that silence carried a weight, a question no one could answer. Where did the Draconians go? Did they die, or did they leave for reasons no human could ever understand? One thing was certain. Something had happened out there that defied all logic. A power greater than war, greater than fear itself, had erased an entire armada from existence. Humanity stood victorious but uneasy, their triumph shadowed by mystery. And though the stars above shone brighter than before, no one could shake the feeling that somewhere, in the vast dark between worlds, the story wasn't over yet. The Earth was safe, for now. Yet in the hearts of those who had seen the alien ships vanish, one thought echoed again and again. What if they were not destroyed? Only waiting to return? Weeks had passed since the alien fleet had vanished, leaving only questions behind. The world had gone strangely quiet again, but it was not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the heavy, tense silence that comes after a storm, when everyone knows something might still be hiding beyond the horizon. Scientists all over the world kept trying to understand what had happened to the Draconian Armada. Every recording, every piece of data they had collected before the ships turned to dust was studied again and again. Yet nothing made sense. Then one morning, something unusual happened. Deep under the Pacific Ocean, a set of monitoring stations picked up strange vibrations. At first, they thought it was an earthquake, but the pattern was too steady, too rhythmic. The sounds repeated at perfect intervals, like a pulse or heartbeat coming from far below the ocean floor. It wasn't natural. The same pattern had been recorded before from the Draconian ships just before they vanished. That realization sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Could it be possible that the aliens hadn't truly disappeared? Could something from their ships have reached Earth? A small group of scientists and naval engineers were sent to investigate the source of the vibrations. Their mission was kept secret, hidden from the public to avoid panic. The team set out on a special research vessel equipped with deep-sea exploration technology, ready to descend into one of the deepest trenches in the Pacific. As they reached the site, the ocean was calm, almost unnaturally so. Even the waves seemed quieter. The crew lowered sensors into the depths, listening closely. The deeper they went, the stronger the signal became. It wasn't random noise anymore, it was music of a sort. Low humming tones that rose and fell in rhythm. It sounded like something alive. When the submersibles were finally deployed, the cameras revealed something no one could have imagined. Far below, where sunlight could never reach, there was light. Faint, bluish glows pulsed in the darkness, scattered across the ocean floor like a city seen from space. As they got closer, they realized the lights were coming from a huge structure buried under layers of silt and rock. It was not natural. It was shaped, formed, designed. The surface of the structure looked eerily familiar. The same patterns and designs that had been seen on the Draconian ships were there. Organic-looking ridges, glowing veins of light running across a metal-like shell. It was as if one of their ships had been resting there long before the invasion even began. The crew sat in stunned silence as they watched their screens. The realization struck them all at once. The Draconians hadn't just come to Earth, they had been here before. The discovery raised terrifying questions. Was this their base? Their birthplace? Or had they been sleeping beneath Earth's oceans, waiting for the right time to awaken? The vibrations pulsing through the trench seemed to grow louder, as if something had sensed their presence. The readings on their instruments began to spike. Strange symbols appeared on their sonar screens, flickering shapes that resembled alien writing. The team decided to get closer. Their submersible drifted toward an opening at the base of the structure, a massive archway large enough to swallow a city block. Inside, their lights reflected off smooth, curved walls that seemed to breathe slowly, expanding and contracting as if the structure itself were alive. No one spoke. Every heartbeat in that cabin felt louder than the sounds outside. Then the sound changed. The rhythmic pulses became faster, almost urgent, like something waking up after a long sleep. The lights inside the structure brightened, glowing white-blue, casting shifting patterns across the dark water. The crew's instruments went wild. Magnetic readings, pressure sensors, everything spiked at once. They tried to back away, but the water around the submersible began to swirl, pulling them slightly toward the glowing core. Suddenly, the vibrations stopped. The lights faded. Silence returned. Their equipment returned to normal. The trench was dark again, empty, as if nothing had ever been there. They surfaced hours later, pale and shaken, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Every recording from the submersible had been wiped clean. The data drives were intact but blank, erased by something. Only a few seconds of footage remained, an image of the glowing lights deep below, arranged in a spiral pattern, slowly pulsing before they went dark. When the team reported back, the world's governments immediately classified the information. Only a few officials knew what they had found. To the public, it was announced as a geological anomaly, but within secret research groups, whispers began spreading about what the ocean was hiding and what it might mean for humanity. Over the following days, strange things started happening across coastal areas. Fishermen reported seeing strange lights under their boats at night, moving far too fast to be any submarine. Some said they heard deep sounds rising from below like thunder under the sea. Marine animals began acting strangely, gathering near the shores in large numbers, then vanishing suddenly. The scientists who had gone on the mission couldn't forget what they had seen. A few of them began studying old Earth records, ancient myths and legends from different civilizations. To their surprise, many old stories spoke of beings who came from the stars and returned to the oceans. Some cultures had drawings of serpent-like shapes with glowing eyes descending into the sea. These stories were dismissed as myths for centuries, but now they didn't seem so impossible. It became clear that the Draconians hadn't chosen Earth at random. They had come for a reason. Perhaps they were returning to something left behind thousands of years ago. Perhaps Earth was not just another planet to conquer. It was a place that was already connected to them in some way. Soon after, oceanic sensors picked up another signal, this time from a different trench, thousands of kilometers away from the first one. The same pulse pattern repeated there too. It was as if something was spreading, awakening across the ocean floor. Governments tried to monitor these signals, but one by one, the sensors stopped working. The devices simply shut down without explanation, just like the drones that had explored the alien ships in space. The connection between what had happened above the stars and what was happening below the sea was undeniable now. For many, fear turned to fascination. People began to believe Earth had always been special, a place marked by something ancient. Some said the Draconians weren't an invading race at all, but the descendants of something that had once lived here, long before humanity. Maybe they had gone to the stars and were now returning to reclaim their origin. The most haunting discovery came weeks later. A group of deep-sea divers found a metallic fragment washed up on a remote beach. It was smooth, silver blue, and when scanned, it emitted a low humming sound that matched the Draconian signal. Scientists determined it wasn't just metal. It was partly biological. The fragment reacted to touch, pulsing faintly like it was still alive. That was the proof everyone needed. The Draconians hadn't vanished completely. Pieces of their technology, or perhaps their very being, had fused with Earth's environment. Despite the fear this caused, many people also began to feel a strange pull toward the ocean, a curiosity they couldn't explain. Some said they dreamed of vast underwater cities glowing in the darkness, of voices calling them below. Scientists started debating whether Earth was not only their home, but humanity's as well, shaped by a connection long forgotten. The mystery deepened with every discovery. Humanity had always looked to the stars for answers, believing life existed out there far beyond reach. But now it seemed that the truth might lie beneath their own oceans. Whatever the Draconians were searching for, they had found it here. And even though their ships had vanished, something from them remained, watching, waiting deep below. The world above carried on as if nothing had happened. People went about their daily lives, unaware that under the vast ocean something ancient and powerful had stirred, and those who knew the truth could only wonder, if the Draconians had come home, what would they do next? Was the ocean simply their resting place, or was it the doorway to something far greater, waiting to rise once again? For days the world seemed calm again, but that calm felt strange. Too quiet, too heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath. People had started to move on with their lives, but deep inside they knew something was not right. The oceans were restless. Ships at sea reported strange magnetic disturbances, and sonar readings showed shadows that moved like living things under the water. Scientists tried to explain it away as natural causes, but the truth was harder to ignore. Something below the surface had awakened. Then one night an old signal reappeared. It wasn't from the ocean this time, it came from space. Every deep space radar picked it up at once. A transmission, weak and broken, echoing across the solar system. The sound was faint, like a whisper carried by wind through metal. When decoded, it was recognized instantly. The signal came from the lunar base that had been destroyed during the Draconian invasion. Everyone thought that base and everyone on it had been lost forever. But now the transmission proved otherwise. The voice was human. Distorted, tired, but clearly human. It repeated the same words again and again. They weren't coming to conquer. They were coming home. The world froze. Those 7 words changed everything. If the Draconians weren't invaders, then who were they? What were they trying to return to? Governments called emergency meetings. The message was analyzed, studied, and verified by multiple labs. It was real. No trick, no interference. Someone or something had sent that message from a dead base on the moon. Across Earth, people began to panic again. News channels replayed the voice constantly. Social media exploded with theories. Some said the Draconians were humanity's ancient ancestors who had once lived on Earth and then left the planet. Others claimed they had created life here long ago and were returning to reclaim it. A few believed the message was a warning, sent by humans who had discovered the truth too late. In the middle of all this chaos, strange natural changes began to occur. The magnetic poles of the Earth shifted slightly. Ocean tides became unpredictable, rising and falling in ways no scientist could explain. And then, deep-sea sensors once again picked up that same rhythmic pulse, the same sound that had come from the alien ships before they vanished. This time it was louder. It echoed from several different points across the planet's oceans, like a chorus calling out from the deep. Research teams tried to investigate again, but every attempt failed. Submarines lost communication as soon as they entered the affected zones. Drones sent underwater went offline within minutes, and when they were retrieved, their systems were completely erased. The only thing left in their data was that same pulsing pattern, repeating endlessly. Despite the fear spreading around the world, some scientists couldn't help but feel wonder. What if the Draconians had not died or vanished but merged with the planet itself? Maybe their technology wasn't just mechanical. It was alive, capable of transforming and adapting. Perhaps their ships had dissolved not in destruction, but in transformation, becoming part of Earth's hidden systems, blending with its oceans, its magnetic field, even its atmosphere. Months passed. The world learned to live with uncertainty, but then something even stranger happened. People living near coastlines began to hear low sounds at night, deep, slow vibrations that seemed to come from beneath the waves. Those who heard it described it as calming, almost musical, though it filled them with emotion they couldn't explain. Sadness, curiosity, longing. Some people said the sound felt like a memory, as if Earth itself was remembering something ancient. Then came the sightings. Ships traveling through the Pacific reported seeing enormous shapes moving far below the surface, shapes that glowed faintly with blue light, just like the Draconian ships once did. They never surfaced, never attacked, never communicated. They simply moved through the depths, silent and unseen, leaving behind trails of shimmering particles in the water. At first, the military tried to track and identify them, but nothing worked. The shapes disappeared whenever satellites looked directly at them, as though the ocean itself was hiding them. The few sonar images that were captured showed outlines that looked half organic, half machine, too smooth to be whales, too massive to be submarines. The world grew divided. Some saw the Draconians as a threat still waiting for the right time to strike again. Others believed they were guardians, awakened to protect something hidden within Earth. Religious groups began calling them the Ancient Watchers, saying they had returned to restore balance. Meanwhile, scientists continued to analyze the old lunar message. Hidden deep within the audio file, they discovered another layer, a faint recording buried under the human voice. It was a series of coordinates. When plotted, those coordinates pointed to several deep-sea trenches across the globe, including the same one where the glowing structure had first been found. A new expedition was secretly organized. This time the mission was not just to observe, but to uncover the truth. Using unmanned drones equipped with reinforced shielding, the team sent one probe into the deepest trench listed in the coordinates. As it descended, the ocean grew darker and the signal weakened just as before. Then the cameras caught something incredible. Far below, the darkness was lit by faint patterns moving across the ocean floor, symbols glowing in slow rhythm, forming a massive circular design. The patterns looked almost like a message or perhaps a doorway. The probe's sensors detected intense energy readings unlike anything known to science. Then, just before the signal cut off, the camera caught one last image, a massive eye-like structure opening, releasing a beam of soft blue light that spread outward through the water. The transmission ended there. The drone never returned. Back on the surface, the world felt that something had changed again. The oceans calmed, the strange vibrations stopped, and the sky seemed clearer than before. Some believed whatever had been awakening beneath the sea had gone back to sleep. Others believed it had finally completed what it came to do. A few nights later, astronomers detected something new in space. A faint light near the edge of the solar system, a formation of small glowing objects moving in perfect harmony. They were traveling away from Earth, slow but steady, like a fleet departing for a long journey. Their energy signatures matched those of the vanished Draconian ships. Theories spread once again. Some said the Draconians had finished what they came for, taking something from Earth, perhaps data, DNA, or memories. Others said they had reconnected with their home beneath the oceans and were now leaving peacefully. But one thought lingered above all. If they had come home, then where were they going now? As time passed, humanity began to accept the mystery. Life continued, though something deep within people had changed. The world felt different, more connected, more alive, as if the Earth itself had awakened. The oceans seemed to breathe, the stars seemed to shimmer with new meaning, and the message from the moon still echoed in every curious mind. They weren't coming to conquer. They were coming home. Some scientists believed that message was not just for Earth, it was for all of humanity. A reminder that maybe humans were not the first children of this planet. Maybe they were part of something much larger, something ancient and shared across the stars. The Draconian Armada was gone without a trace, but their story was now written into Earth's history. It was not a story of invasion or destruction, but of return and rediscovery. Humanity had faced the unknown and survived, but more than that, they had learned that the universe was not as empty as they once thought. In the quiet that followed, as people looked up at the night sky, a new kind of hope began to grow. Maybe one day humanity would follow the same path to the stars, to the unknown, and maybe even home again. And somewhere deep beneath the waves, far below where sunlight can reach, a single faint blue light pulsed once, then faded away.